President Donald Trump announced yesterday from his golf resort in Turnberry, Scotland, that the United States and the European Union have reached a landmark trade agreement. The announcement, made alongside European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, marks the culmination of months of intense and often fraught negotiations aimed at resetting the transatlantic trade relationship. While full details of the comprehensive deal are set to be released later this week, sources familiar with the talks indicate it addresses several key areas of friction. The agreement reportedly includes the mutual elimination of tariffs on a wide range of industrial goods, including automobiles and machinery. It also establishes a new framework for agricultural trade, a historically contentious issue, potentially opening up European markets to more American farm products while setting new shared standards for food safety and production. Furthermore, the deal is said to contain provisions on digital trade, aiming to prevent the EU from imposing digital services taxes that would disproportionately affect American tech giants. In return, the U.S. has reportedly made concessions on environmental and labor standards, aligning more closely with European regulations. Speaking to reporters against the backdrop of the Scottish coastline, President Trump hailed the agreement as a tremendous victory for American workers and businesses, and a new chapter of friendship with Europe. President von der Leyen echoed this sentiment, calling it a balanced and ambitious deal that will strengthen our economies and our strategic partnership. The agreement now faces a ratification process in both the U.S. Congress and the European Parliament, where it is expected to undergo significant scrutiny. The president's diplomatic efforts in Scotland were not limited to trade. During the same press conference, he addressed the escalating situation in the Middle East, stating that Israel will soon have to make a decision regarding its strategy in Gaza. These comments come just days after the United States formally withdrew its special envoy from ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. The administration has signaled its frustration with the lack of progress in the talks, which have been stalled for weeks over disagreements on hostage releases and the terms of a long-term truce. When pressed by reporters on what he would do, the president demurred, saying, "I know what I'd do, but I don't think it's appropriate that I say, but Israel is going to have to make a decision. It's a mess." The U.S. withdrawal from the talks marks a significant shift in its diplomatic posture, moving away from direct mediation and placing the onus on the regional actors. The president suggested that Hamas may no longer feel incentivized to release the remaining hostages captured during the October 7th attacks, which initiated the current conflict. The remarks have been interpreted as a signal that Washington will support whatever course of action Israel chooses to take next, whether that involves a renewed large-scale military operation or a different strategic approach. The international community is watching closely, with many nations expressing concern that the absence of U.S. mediation could lead to a further destabilization of the already volatile region. While the administration navigates complex geopolitical challenges, a new report from a Washington, D.C. think tank is raising alarms about a critical national security vulnerability tied to global supply chains. The report, issued by the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, finds that China currently controls over 80% of the raw and processed minerals essential for manufacturing high-performance batteries. These batteries are not just for electric cars and smartphones. They are a critical component in a vast array of U.S. military equipment, including drones, advanced missile systems, and battlefield communication devices. The report details how Beijing has achieved this dominance through what it calls brute force economics. This strategy involves massive state subsidies for Chinese companies, the dumping of low-cost products to drive out international competition, intellectual property theft, and lax environmental regulations. The authors warn that this dependency poses a grave threat to American security. In a potential conflict, Beijing could weaponize its control over minerals like lithium, cobalt, and graphite, effectively cutting off the supply needed to produce and maintain essential U.S. military hardware. The report states, in a hot war or even a cold one, Beijing could also weaponize the battery dependence of economic sectors ranging from cars to computers, communications, and construction. The findings are expected to intensify calls in Congress for aggressive action to counter this threat. Proposed solutions include significant investment in domestic mining and refining capabilities, creating a strategic national stockpile of these critical minerals, and forging alliances with other resource-rich nations to build secure, alternative supply chains, independent of Chinese control. Back in the United States, economic policy is at the forefront of the political debate. House Republicans held a public field hearing in Las Vegas to promote their new federal budget, which President Trump signed into law on July 4th. Dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill, its signature proposal is a measure to make the first $25,000 of income earned from tips completely tax-free. At the hearing, Representative Aaron Bean of Florida explained that the idea was born here in Las Vegas, following a conversation the president had with a local server during his campaign. House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith of Missouri touted the direct benefits, stating the provision would give service workers an average tax cut of $1,300 and put an estimated $230 million back into the pockets of tipped workers in the Las Vegas area alone. Proponents argue the tax cut will provide much-needed relief to millions of Americans in the service and hospitality industries and stimulate local economies. However, the budget bill is facing sharp criticism from Democrats and other fiscal watchdog groups. Opponents point to other provisions within the legislation that they argue will harm vulnerable populations and the environment. These include significant restrictions on Medicaid eligibility, which could leave many low-income families without health coverage, and deep cuts to federal funding for renewable energy projects and climate initiatives. Critics argue that the tax cut for tipped workers, while popular, is being used to obscure the broader impacts of the budget, which they claim prioritizes tax reductions over essential social services and long-term investments in sustainable infrastructure. The debate highlights the starkly different economic philosophies shaping policy in Washington. Finally, turning to a developing story from the Department of Justice, the FBI's Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, issued a striking and unusual public statement over the weekend. In a lengthy post on the social media platform X, Bongino confirmed that the agency is actively pursuing multiple high-level investigations into alleged public corruption and the political weaponization of government agencies. He wrote, "The director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us." While he did not provide specific details about the targets or nature of these investigations, citing their ongoing status, it was his subsequent comments that have drawn significant attention across the political spectrum. Bongino, a former Secret Service agent and prominent conservative voice before his appointment, expressed profound dismay at the information uncovered so far. He stated, "What I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core." He concluded with a grave warning. "We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned." The cryptic but powerful message from the second highest official at the FBI has fueled intense speculation in Washington. It suggests that the investigations are substantial and could have far-reaching implications for public officials and government institutions. For now, the public and lawmakers alike are left to await further disclosures from an investigation that, by its own description, has shaken the FBI's leadership.